Coming up on Arirang News, global credit rating agency Standard & Poor's keeps its rating for South Korea at AA, its second highest, and its outlook for the country's economy is stable. The U.S. and China were going to sign a trade deal this month, but they're reportedly looking at pushing it to December, sending stocks sliding. And with South Korea getting ready to host two big international summits this month, President Moon meets with the heads of major global news organizations to try and get them behind his efforts for regional peace. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. President Moon Jaein met this afternoon with the heads of news wire services in the Asia-Pacific region to promote South Korea's hosting of the Korea-ASEAN Special Summit this month in the southern port city of Busan. In town are the heads of 32 news agencies from 28 countries who are attending the Organization of Asia-Pacific News Agencies General Assembly. It was expected that the president would call on their agencies to support his administration's peace initiative with North Korea. He was also likely to explain the South Korean government's efforts to that end and ask the wire agencies to raise awareness of it in the Asia-Pacific region. A ceremony was held on Thursday to mark the 41st anniversary of the establishment of the South Korea-U.S. Combined Forces Command. In a congratulatory message, President Moon Jae-in expressed gratitude for the role the CFC has played in efforts to maintain peace on the Korean Peninsula and in Northeast Asia. President Moon said the alliance's proud history will be forever maintained and that the core values the two countries share will always shine. During the ceremony, the commander of U.S. Forces Korea, General Robert Abrams, said the CFC is the heart and soul of the alliance. It's ready, he said, to deter, defend, and, if necessary, defeat any adversaries who seek to do harm, while remaining hopeful of ongoing diplomatic efforts, apparently referring to efforts to denuclearize North Korea. Meanwhile, North Korea has expressed anger over plans by South Korea and the U.S. to hold a combined military exercise later this year. The North has called it a declaration of confrontation, but the U.S. says it's not going to scale down its exercises based on the North's anger. Oh Jung-hee reports.
The South Korea-U.S. joint air exercise will be carried out as planned, regardless of whether it angers North Korea. That's the reaction from the U.S. after Pyongyang senior diplomats condemned the upcoming Seoul-Washington exercise. To the Voice of America, the U.S. Defense Department spokesperson David Eastburn said, quote, "We don't scale or conduct our exercises based on North Korea's anger." He added that the exercises are to ensure readiness and enhance interoperability between South Korea and the U.S. But he also explained that the exercises allow the diplomats to have the space they need for open conversations with North Korea. This comes after North Korea expressed its fury over a planned joint military drill between Seoul and Washington, calling it a declaration of confrontation. Roving ambassador of the North's Foreign Ministry, Kwon Jung-geun, issued a statement on Wednesday. He stressed that the combined air exercise that South Korea and the U.S. are planning to carry out in December violates the agreement set between North Korea and the U.S. at their first summit in Singapore last year. Saying the exercises throw a wet blanket over the dialogue momentum, Pyongyang warned that its patience is nearing its limit. South Korea and the U.S. are to carry out a combined air exercise in December, which is much scaled down from their usual wintertime exercise, Vigilant Ace. It's known that South Korea's Air Force and the U.S. Air Force will each train separately, and then the combined forces will check their aerial readiness. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
With the top U.S. negotiator on defense cost sharing in Seoul this week, many thought he was here just to gauge public sentiment about how much South Korea should pay the U.S. But it turns out in his talks with officials on Wednesday, he put some big demands on the table. Lee Seung-jae reports.
With James DeHart, the top U.S. negotiator in defense cost-sharing talks in Seoul, sources say the United States is demanding South Korea pay as much as 5 times more in 2020 compared to this year's 10th Special Measures Agreement. The U.S. is also reportedly demanding Seoul pay for U.S. military asset management costs related to security on the Korean Peninsula. This means DeHart pressed South Korea to pay for U.S. military assets stationed outside of the Korean Peninsula. It would mean Seoul will have to bear the cost of asset management at other U.S. bases, such as Guam and Hawaii, assets which would be deployed to the peninsula in case of an emergency. To meet Washington's demand for the 11th Special Measures Agreement, Seoul will have to pay 5 times more in 2020, a figure approaching $5 billion. Officials in Seoul say it's unfair to share the cost of U.S. forces that are not even in Korea. Yoon Sang-hyun, a lawmaker for South Korea's main opposition Liberty Korea Party and chairman of the National Assembly's Foreign Affairs Committee, met with DeHart on Wednesday. Yoon said he raised Seoul's concerns that an excessive demand could adversely affect the alliance, which is based on trust and friendship. With the third round of negotiations to be held in Seoul later this month, watchers say the unpredictable nature of President Trump and South Korea's unwillingness to pay so much means the U.S. could use troop reduction as a negotiating card. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea's top nuclear envoy Lee Do-hoon is on his way to Moscow for talks with his Russian counterpart about North Korea's denuclearization. He'll be sitting down on Friday with Igor Morgulov, Russia's deputy foreign minister. He'll also attend the 2019 Moscow Non-Proliferation Conference, which kicks off Thursday. While he's there, the South Korean envoy is likely to meet North Korean diplomat Jo Chol-soo and U.S. Special Envoy Mark Lambert. Diplomats from China and Japan will also be there. Tottenham Hotspur striker Son Heung-min is now the top South Korean scorer in European club football history. With 123 goals in his European career, he's surpassed the record set by legendary South Korean player and former Bundesliga star Cha Bum-gun. Park Se-young reports.
Adding a pair of goals to his tally, Son Heung-min is now the top-scoring South Korean in European club football history. The striker for Tottenham Hotspur netted 2 goals in the Premier League club's 4-0 victory over Red Star Belgrade in their Group B match of the UEFA Champions League on Tuesday. Son's goals in the 57th and 61st minute were his 122nd and 123rd of his European career, putting him above former Bundesliga star Cha Bum-gun for the most goals scored by a South Korean player in Europe. Son has scored 5 goals in 4 Champions League appearances this season, netting in 3 straight games in the competition for the first time in his career. The new record was set amid concerns over Son's state of mind following his tackle on Everton's Andre Gomez last Sunday that led to a fractured dislocation of the midfielder's right ankle. After his first goal of the match, Son said sorry down the lens and appeared to apologize by bringing his hands together in a praying gesture. Following the match, he said he didn't want to celebrate because he wanted to respect the situation and that he felt really sorry about it. With the victory, Tottenham are in a strong position for a spot in the Champions League knockout stages. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
The global credit rating agency Standard & Poor's has decided to keep its sovereign credit rating for South Korea at AA, its second highest level. S&P says the economy is in decent shape, even though it's been steadily downgrading the country's growth forecast. Yoon Jung-min has the details.
Standard & Poor's has maintained South Korea's sovereign credit rating at AA for over 3 years now. The global ratings agency explained South Korea's economy has strong fundamentals and is well diversified, meaning it doesn't depend on a certain industry or export. It added the country's growth rate is solid compared to other high-income countries. It also forecasts South Korea's GDP per capita to rise from about $32,000 this year to $35,000 in 2022. Short-term GDP growth is expected to hover at around 2%, according to the ratings agency. S&P saw South Korea's economy as rather stable based on its foreign bond status and sound fiscal performance, which is unlikely to turn to a deficit even though the government's revenue is slowly declining. However, S&P says South Korea's exports have been slowing and the trade spat between Seoul and Tokyo has raised uncertainties, which in turn have affected investment sentiment. It recommended South Korea increase its productivity, especially considering its rapidly aging population. It also warned of higher household debt, but took into account efforts to lower the risks of bankruptcy by reining in the lending sector. Another possible risk, the agency says, is the security threat posed by North Korea. S&P has kept South Korea's rating at AA since August 2016, when it was upgraded from AA-. Other global ratings agencies, including Moody's and Fitch, also have South Korea's rating as stable. Moon Jaein, Arirang News.
The signing of the Phase 1 trade deal between Washington and Beijing was expected to happen at a summit this month, but reportedly might be pushed back until next month. According to Reuters, a senior official at the Trump administration says the signing of the deal could be delayed until December because they're still discussing the actual terms of the deal and where to sign it. The official reportedly said that while a deal is likely, there's a small chance that one won't be reached. Reports say Presidents Trump and Xi are considering summit venues in the U.S. and in Europe. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that, I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Yuan Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you as always for making time.
Thank you for having me today.
So the S&P has decided to keep its sovereign credit rating for Korea at AA, a stable outlook for the economy as well. Tell us about that.
Yes, as you said, Standard & Poor's on Wednesday affirmed its AA sovereign credit rating for South Korea, despite the earlier slashing of its growth outlook for the Asia's fourth largest economy. If you look at S&P's actions in the past, they have lowered the growth outlook for South Korea by 3 times already this year, from 2.6% in January to 2.4% in April, and then 2% in July. Continued to slashing the growth outlook to 1.8% last month. However, though, they have decided to keep the current rating at AA credit rating because of the outlook horizon. Korean economic growth rate should not decline further, but should be able to stabilize. They also said that this stable outlook reflects the expectation that geopolitical risk in the Korean Peninsula will not escalate to the point of hurting the Korean economic fundamentals over the next 2 years. So overall, the market reaction to this is pretty mild. Nothing really big in terms of the share price movement. Global equity market also did some correction yesterday. Accordingly, Korean market did kind of flat performance. As for the Kosdaq, it was down about 0.5%.
Well, meanwhile, we've got this report saying that the so-called Phase 1 deal between the U.S. and China, which had been expected to be signed this month, might be pushed to next month. How's that affected the markets?
Yes, it did affect it negatively, but not that by much. Ever since the President Donald Trump said that he and President Xi Jinping would meet to sign a trade deal, the Wall Street had been hanging on the every speculative words about where and when the signing might take place. Everybody were expecting that this might happen in November, but now the Reuters are saying that it might be delayed till December. So that's why everybody seems to be concerned about the timing. But nevertheless, we think that both parties of U.S. and China wants to sign the deal. We just think that it will take a longer time. And also in terms of this trade negotiation, it's not something that can be done very quickly. It will be a long-term process, and it is only first phase agreement. So most likely before the end of this year, the signing will happen. Looking into the further longer-term basis, we think that any kind of trade agreement is positive news relative to what's been happening in the last several months. So therefore, equity market will take some additional booster once the first phase is signed.
Got it. And, we really have seen the markets going back and forth all the time, as you said, on this trade deal. What's your outlook for stocks in, say, the short to midterm?
Well, all it's concerned about is what's happening to the economic growth rate. And the recent Fed's 3 times rate cut was actually an insurance cut or is a continuation of cut because of the economy slowing so fast that they need to boost the economy. Now, we think that, though, it is an insurance cut phase. In the since 1987, we have seen 3 times of the insurance cuts. That happened in 1987, 1995, and 1998. And all 3 times they cut 75 basis point rate cut while they were actually raising interest rate over the long period of time. So this was those were the insurance cut. If this time around also 3 times cut by 75 basis points is an insurance cut, then we think the economy is not going to go to the recessionary territories. Rather, it should stabilize and then pick up again in the future. If that's the case, the equity market should do quite a nice run over the next 12 to 18 months by at least 2-digit growth rate over that period of time. And also the currency, the dollar, should strengthen after the insurance cut because the interest rate will no longer fall.
All right, Mr. Yu, we'll be watching that very closely. Thanks again for your insights.
Thank you very much.
Now, it turns out Samsung Electronics has spent more on semiconductors than any of its global competitors over the past few years as it bids to lead the global market. According to market researcher IC Insights, the South Korean tech giant's capital expenditure on semiconductors since 2017 amounts to $65.8 billion. Intel, the world's second biggest spender, went through $43 billion over the same period. Samsung plans to make massive investments in memory chip infrastructure to prepare for long-term demand in the future. Other leading chip makers are also expected to have increased their investments. Kakao Corp, the operator of South Korea's main mobile messaging app, Kakao Talk, posted record sales in the third quarter thanks to its robust content business. The company's sales hit a record high of $675 million in the July to September period, up 31% on year. Operating profits surged over 90% on year to more than $50 million. Kakao said the revenue from its platform services jumped nearly 40% on year on the back of businesses including B2B service Kakao Talk Bizboard and Kakao Pay. Revenue from content also increased thanks to its music streaming service Melon. It's been 1 week since South Korea launched open banking, which enables people to access all their bank accounts with just one app, and already it's got more than 1 million users. According to the Financial Services Commission, as of Wednesday, more than 1 million people have registered around 1.8 million accounts. 10 banks are available on the beta version. In the meantime, the Financial Services Commission is trying to improve the system so that people don't need to use their account number to register. A recent survey suggests more than half of Koreans are habitual coffee drinkers. The industry continues to grow, with imports doubling in just the last 5 years. But with an excess of supply, some shops struggle and have to close down. Choi Jung-yoon has this report.
350 cups. That's how much coffee the average Korean adult drinks in a year. This is almost 3 times the global average, which is around 130 cups a year. According to a report from KB Research, households spent roughly $14 a month last year on coffee, which is double what they were spending 5 years ago. The jump was much higher for one-person households who tripled their coffee expenses. The coffee market is expanding rapidly to meet this demand. An estimated 38 coffee shops open every day in Korea, adding to a total of around 70,000. Total sales at Korea's cafes, excluding the big directly managed chains, placed third following the United States and China, adding up to $4.3 billion, a 10 times jump from 2007. But it's a risky business. 1 in 10 cafes lose money, and of those that closed last year, half of them lasted less than 3 years. For small cafes, it's even harder. The trendy American chain Blue Bottle has seen revenue at one of its stores jump 85% this year, while the bottom of 20% of Korea's coffee shops saw sales plunge almost 50%. The most powerful coffee brand in the country, according to the report, is Starbucks, with annual sales exceeding that of the top 5 local brands combined. Choi Jung-yoon, Arirang News.
People with so-called tic disorders, which cause them to involuntarily do or say certain things repeatedly, will now be protected in Korea by laws related to disabilities. South Korea's Supreme Court ruled Thursday that a disability rating must be assigned to people with tic disorders like Tourette's syndrome to enable them to get various kinds of benefits from the state. The court's ruling was on a lawsuit filed by a person with Tourette's syndrome who'd sued a county administration for rejecting his application to be considered disabled. The Supreme Court said the county has to assign the person the disability rating closest to the severity of his condition. One of the world's biggest events for arts and crafts is being held in the South Korean city of Cheongju. Works there from all over the world, different traditions to learn about, and some things to buy. Lee Min-sun takes us there.
One of the largest craft festivals in the world is taking place in South Korea's central city of Cheongju, Chungcheongbuk-do province. The 11th Cheongju Craft Biennale came back for its 20th year with 2,000 pieces of craft art by 1,200 artists from 36 countries. It's a place for leading and emerging craft artists to show off the traditional beauty and contemporary value of craft arts. 5 main exhibitions and 3 special exhibitions are being held at several venues across the city. Culture Factory C, the main venue of the Craft Biennale, used to be a tobacco factory, but it has been turned into a cultural facility where artists from around the world can gather and share their work. Exhibitions display items made from metal, ceramics, wood, textile, and glass, and showcase diversity and artistic efforts to connect traditions with the practical values of modern times.
Our Biennale shows a new and experimental value. It's more than just making and presenting good artworks, so I created the exhibition space. That's comfortable for all. I wanted to present not only traditional crafts, but also various aspects of craft art from the past, present, and future.
There are 3 special exhibitions, including one to celebrate the 30th anniversary of relations between South Korea and ASEAN countries. Crafts from 10 ASEAN countries show the unique culture of each of the countries, yet display some common characteristics that exist across the region. On the weekend, visitors can also participate in an art bridge program that connects 7 art museums and galleries in Cheongju. Those with tickets to the Biennale can join the tour bus program that runs free of charge. Those who want to take some craft work home with them can check out Cheongju Craft Fair taking place at the main venue. With some 150 participating artists and shops, visitors can purchase small items from the global craft marketplace or make their own craft art at the experience space. Cheongju Craft Biennale runs through November 17th. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News, Cheongju.
Autumn in Korea is a sight to behold. If you're in the country but haven't had a chance to get away to the mountains, there's still time to see some amazing foliage at a botanical garden not far from Seoul. Our Kim Bo-kyung went to check it out and filed this report.
The autumn foliage has already reached its peak, but it's not too late to experience it in all its glory at this place. At Hwadan Botanic Garden, only 40 minutes away from Seoul, people can walk through the beautiful scenery surrounded by around 400 types of maple trees. Situated 500 meters above sea level, the wide-ranging temperatures make the colors all the more vivid.
I got to witness the most vibrant crimson I've ever seen here at the Hwadan Botanic Garden. The autumn foliage is truly beautiful. My colleagues and I came here to enjoy a picnic. I never realized how beautiful the red autumn leaves are until I saw foliage here. We're definitely having a memorable moment here, enjoying the colors and breathing fresh air.
Not only that, you don't have to hike deep into the mountains. Senior citizens and families with young kids can enjoy the whole garden in comfort, thanks to the level terrain.
The path is very nice to walk on, so people with strollers and wheelchairs can enjoy the view.
If walking gets tiring, there's a monorail. It stops at 3 places in the garden, and although it costs a little more than walking, it offers breathtaking views of the autumn colors. There's a lot more here than just the red maple trees. The leaves of the birch trees have turned gold, and the chrysanthemums have bloomed in a mesmerizing array of other colors. Visitors can enjoy the autumn leaves of Hwadan Botanic Garden until this Sunday. It might be nice to have a meal beforehand too, because food is not allowed inside. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.
Who's way on?